Okay, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 10th Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. It is now 7:03 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Just for procedural notes, first of all, this meeting is being held electronically as per section 19I of our Town's Procedure Bylaw 6228-19 as amended due to the COVID-19 situation. So our first order of business today is the appointment of the chair and the vice chair. So we'll deal with them separately. So first I'll look to the committee for a nomination for an appointment to appoint a committee member as chair for the year 2021 of this committee. So do I have any nominations or any volunteers?
I would like to volunteer.
Perfect. So all right, Rochelle. So do I have a mover and a seconder to appoint Rochelle as the chair of the committee?
John, make that motion.
All right, is that John and seconded by?
Matthew.
Matthew, okay, perfect. All right, and all those I'm sorry, Joanne?
Can we nominate somebody else too?
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely nominate someone else for chair, but there's also a vice chair position. So yeah, if you'd like to nominate somebody else, then we can vote on each one separately if you're okay. If we can do that as well, not a problem. So who would you like to nominate, Joanne?
Well, I was thinking I was going to nominate John.
So
I can.
yeah, so John and Haley have already served 2 years as chair and vice chair, so they are no longer able to as per our policy. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine then. Okay.
All right.
This is a good thing, Joanne. We're finally kicking John out.
Okay. So all right then. So let's call the vote then. So so all those in favor to appoint Rochelle as the chair for the committee?
Aye, Joanne.
Any opposed? Okay, so that carries. So Rochelle has been appointed the chair. So now I will look to the committee to appoint the vice chair. So any nominations?
I would like to do it.
Matthew, okay. All right, do I have a...
It's John, I'll make the motion.
Perfect, John. And it's moved by John and seconded by?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Joanne. Okay, any comments or questions? Nope. Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Okay, that carries. All right, over to you, Madam Chair. So Rochelle, I'll let you take over.
Congratulations.
Oh, I'm going in cold, am I? Okay.
I'm here if you need any, I can assist you if you require any help.
So Ashita, I had a question though. So that script that you sent, is that something that's typically sent all the time, or is this like you can use this format for subsequent meetings?
So it will be sent every meeting. So every meeting we will circulate that to the chair and the vice chair. So that way you will have that with you in case if you need to refer to, or if you had to leave in between, then the vice chair will have that. So yeah,
okay,
we will circulate that
perfect.
for every month and every meeting. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
No problem. So over to you.
Okay, so where are we now in this? Okay, so we're now into the approval of the agenda. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated by Legislative Services?
Matthew.
We'll approve it.
And seconded?
And then we got Joanne and there, Rochelle.
Oh, I didn't, sorry, I apologize, Joanne, I didn't hear your voice. Okay, any questions or comments on the agenda? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest?
Give me 1 second. The Unit 180 Industrial Parkway North, I do not want to participate.
Okay. All right, any others?
Who was that?
All right.
I didn't know.
That was Matthew, Joanne.
Oh, Matthew, okay.
Okay, we'll turn now to receipt of the minutes, I guess. May I please have a motion to receive the meeting minutes of December 9th, 2020?
Matthew.
Second?
March.
Max, thank you. Any questions or comments on the minutes? No, okay. Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries. Item 6, delegations. We have no delegations this evening. Okay, and then 7, matters for consideration. Okay, 7.1, I guess we're beginning with a memorandum from the Accessibility Advisor regarding Engaged Inclusive Project. We have a presentation from Erin Serenzi. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, and Kim Clark.
Perfect. Thank you, Rochelle, and congratulations on being chair. Look forward to working with you in the capacity, and congratulations, Matthew. This motion and the memorandum that we have in front of us today is actually going to be deferred. Both Erin and Kim were unable to attend for tonight's meeting due to personal reasons. So I asked that the committee defers this up until March, where they're able to come and present to us. And so that way we can get them to give us the full explanation and background on the memorandum that you see in front of you right now.
Okay. Do we have to take it? I don't know. Sorry, my inexperience. Do we have to take a kind of like motion or a vote on that, or is that just we just move to the next item?
Yeah, we would just vote to. Okay, go ahead, Ashita.
Sorry, so through you, Madam Chair, so you will be asking for a motion to defer to the March Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. So that's what you'll be asking. Yeah.
Okay, so can I get a motion to defer?
Mrs. John? Yes?
I'll make a note.
Sorry, Joanne.
Okay. Second, sorry. Did somebody second it?
Joanne did say something, yes?
Oh,
did
apologies.
say.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Joanne. All right. So I guess we'll move on to 7.2. Memorandum.
Sorry,
does
Madam
someone
Chair,
say-
you'll have to ask for a vote on that motion to defer before we move
I'm
on.
sorry.
Yes, please.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Ashita. I'm very
Not a problem. No
okay.
problem.
So all right. So I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. So now we move on to 7.2, memorandum from the Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application OPA-2017-01, ZVA 2017-03, and SUB 2017-02, 20 and 25 Maverik Boulevard. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Matthew.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Max. And second?
Joanne will second it.
Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an OPA memorandum. So in this case, we're going to be taking a look at a subdivision. So prior to me actually opening up the site plan application, I have the memorandum in front of you guys. Obviously, it's best if you have my comments separate, as we always do, and I'll kind of just go ahead and move over to the site plan so we can go through the comments that I've provided for this specific site plan application. And so in this neighborhood, you're going to notice that we have a variety of story townhomes. One thing I wanted to chat with you guys about, and it's not specifically applicable to this site plan, but something for consideration, I think, for us down the road is a discussion about taking a look at Caledon's housing proposal that they have basically for accessibility. And so they discuss actually accessibility features and expectations in homes being built in their municipality. This is something that, similar to what we're doing with the facility accessibility design standards, goes above the minimum Ontario building code and codes for housing units. But we can discuss that a little bit later on, because what I'm going to get to with this piece is, like we've always said, whenever you kind of take a look at townhomes or subdivisions, we have limitations in terms of our comments and feedback in terms of accessibility for these subdivisions. Our focus will be strictly on the design of public spaces. So I just wanted to reemphasize that piece, just because we're going to be looking at a number of subdivision units today in today's agenda. So in this specific example on Maverik Boulevard, we have just a residential subdivision with a number of townhouses, and we do have a seniors building. So can everyone just kind of give me a thumbs up? You guys can see my mouse moving around. Just want to make sure everyone can see that. Perfect. So in the seniors building that you can locate over here, they have done actually a very good job. In the next couple of drawings, it will be a little bit easier for you guys to see. I made sure to have one without a lot of like the grading and stuff available for you guys. They have provided 5 barrier-free parking spots, including the access aisles. And what I actually like about the developer's work in this specific site plan application is they have provided barrier-free parking around the entire subdivision. And so you're going to just watch my mouse over here. You can see, so in this stage of subdivision, in this set of units, they have provided barrier-free parking for visitors on both sides. So you can see where my mouse is hovering right over here. We have a barrier-free parking spot with its corresponding access aisle. And then on the north side as well, you can see another barrier-free parking spot. On the other side of the actual subdivision, it's the same story. So you can see where my mouse is hovering. They have provided barrier-free parking for this unit, or visitor parking. And then again, on the opposite side, they have provided visitor parking. So in total, this developer has done a good job of providing extra barrier-free parking throughout the subdivision. One of the points that I did put in there as a consideration, just because they have met the legislation on this piece, is to actually add in a couple of more. So I'm being greedy with this one, but the purpose behind it is they have a couple of parkettes around the subdivision. So you can see where my mouse is hovering right now on the screen. And sorry if I'm close on your cameras, just because I'm trying to look at my small screen here when I'm taking a look at the site map with you. They didn't provide barrier-free parking next to the park. So we have one over here on the left side. And if you turn your attention over to where the seniors building is, they have another one over here as well, right around the red border. Now, there is barrier-free parking close to both of these areas. And so that's why I said as consideration for them to add additional ones, just because, like I said, they have met the legislation. But I wanted to highlight that point as one of the comments that I made specifically for this memorandum. Some of the normal comments that we normally put in for any of the park and outdoor features, I have mentioned to them to ensure that they incorporate accessibility features to the park, as well as ensuring that if there is any play space subject for use, to make sure that they're using an accessible firm ground. And then the last piece I added in, there is no confirmation on whether or not they actually have outdoor eating spaces in this specific site plan application. But I did mention what we normally do, which is ensuring that they do have the minimum 20% that we ask for according to the public design of spaces. I'll jump down just to show you guys on a different site plan option, just to show you a little bit of an easier read. So as I was mentioning before, here's the barrier-free parking around the seniors building. Oh, crap. Excuse me. I just went over and clicked it. Going back. So we have the barrier-free parking over here. Like I mentioned, for the other units, you can see they're all located around nicely. It's just really around the parks. They do have on-street parking available for people to use, but no barrier-free parking in it that's parallel to the parkettes. So just wanted to highlight that one piece for you guys. But other than that, I didn't have any further comments because we can't really comment on the actual residential homes or anything. But I'll open the floor over to the Accessibility Advisory Committee to see if you guys have any questions or concerns that you'd like to add into the comments that I provided.
One comment in addition to more barrier-free parking, I would suggest that they put the barrier-free parking more spaced out.
Thank you, Max. So just for everyone else, Max was mentioning that he would provide a recommendation to space out the barrier-free parking, right, Max? Did I catch everything there?
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm gonna rebuttal you on this one. Which ones would we want to actually space out? So I do think they've done a good job with the current positioning of barrier-free parking, and I'll justify why I think that. So you can see that they have a couple over here. This specific visitor parking. Again, the four corners all have visitor parking. And then they have the majority of the barrier-free parking specifically for the seniors building. Now, I think we can agree that the majority of individuals that would be requiring our barrier-free parking would be going to the seniors building. So I don't know that I'd want to take away any of the barrier-free parking that they've passed to that building to spread them out within the subdivision. So I'd like to keep my comments, if the committee can agree on it, with just consideration for additional barrier-free parking. But I wouldn't want to move around too much with what they've done, because I actually do think they've done a good job with the positioning of these spots.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe adding the make it so there is one for every block of.
Sorry, Max, I got cut off there. My dog started barking. I don't know if you guys heard that.
Oh, yes.
Sorry about that. Max, do you mind repeating that piece? Because I didn't catch it. I'm so sorry.
I was just thinking having one for every block of houses.
Yeah, I agree with that point. So Max was just mentioning that he'd like to see one for pretty much like every like visitor unit spaced out amongst the different townhouses. So I agree with that position. That's why I put the consideration for them to add additional barrier-free parking in pretty much all of the areas that we've identified over here. So as soon as we hear back from the developer, we'll know, and then we can kind of play around with that piece, Max. So we'll see what they add in if they consider that piece. And I agree with that. Is if we get additional spots, we can evenly distribute them amongst all the different areas of the neighborhood. Any additional comments or concerns? While you guys are
What about
thinking.
accessible housing? I know we've touched base on this before with some stacked townhouses. These are all two-story homes.
Correct. Yeah. And so let's put that item, John. I can write that down actually for us to have that conversation when we come to the roundtable discussion, because that's what I was mentioning at the beginning. I think that would be a next step once we finish the facility accessibility design standards. I think that would be another standard that we start looking towards to implement at the town of Aurora.
Okay.
So while you guys are thinking, here's the grade map. No concerns with elevation on this, just so you guys don't have to squint too much. And that's it in terms of drawings. So Rochelle, I'm not hearing any other comments. I think we're good to put a motion forward.
I have a quick comment.
Yeah, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, just a question about is the number 9, looks like there's 9, is that compliant with the zoning? Is that how many they're required on this site?
Which 9 to what, Mr. Councillor?
9 accessible parking spots.
Okay, so the way barrier-free parking works, and I think it would be good for you and I to sit down maybe sometime, John, to kind of go over, I don't know what your background is in terms of site plan applications. If you have a background on this, maybe it'll be easier for you to understand or not, but I'm more than happy to sit down with you anytime to go through this stuff. But the way it works in terms of barrier-free parking, the legislation has different sections based on the amount of parking that's being provided by development. So for example, in the first section between 1 to 12 parking spots, they basically mandate that you provide 1 barrier-free parking. And then once you move in from 13 to about 100, you're asking for 4% of the total parking provided. and then so on. So then from there, you'd be going into the 200 range, it turns into 3% plus 1 and so on. And so that's how we dictate how much barrier-free parking is required. In this case, because it's residential, we're focusing strictly on visitor parking because otherwise they're all private parking spots. And so in this case, we can jump up over here and the visitor parking you can see shows right over here where my mouse is. We have 31 spots. And so that's how we know, if I calculate that very quickly, 31 spots times 4%, they're required to provide us with 2 barrier-free parking spots. And so they're quite a bit over the recommendation.
So just to be clear, for this
Yep.
entire development, they're only required 2 barrier-free parking spots?
Yep, because it goes based on visitor parking. So barrier-free parking gets a percentage of total amount of parking.
Okay, seems not too many. I'm glad to see that they're putting more than what's legislated.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, so we'll bring it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. We'll move on to item 7.3, memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application SP 2020-12, 180 Industrial Parkway North. This regarding submission number 1. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Joanne will move it.
Thanks, Joanne. A second?
John, I'll second.
Thanks, John.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. So in this case, we're going to be looking at SP 2020-12. This is a first submission for 180 Industrial Parkway North. And similar to the previous site plan application, if you guys keep the memorandum in front of you on your screens, I will jump ahead over to the actual site plan so we can walk through the comments that I've submitted over to the planning team. So in this specific memorandum that we're going to be taking a look at, we have one additional proposed building being added on to an existing one-story building. So this is not a completely new build. We are basically looking at an addition to an existing building. For my comments that I've provided in this specific site plan application, the minimum requirement for parking here is 3 barrier-free parking spots. As you can see in the site plan application in front of you, they have 2. They have provided a type A barrier-free parking spot, which is where my current mouse is hovering. And then you can see right to the left of it, they have provided a type B. In this specific site plan application, they will have to add in 1 additional barrier-free parking spot, and it would have to be a type B, just because it's an odd one out. So I have added that comment in. They'll have to add in and increase up to at least 3 barrier-free parking spots. The good thing about this specific one, they have indicated that all of the access aisles do have a barrier-free entrance onto the exterior path of travel leading into the proposed building. So you can see where my mouse is hovering on both of these access aisles. They have the curb depressions associated with them. And this leads into a cobblestone barrier-free path over to the actual proposed building. And so over here where my mouse is hovering is the current entrance into the existing building. And then where my mouse is leading over towards right now is a proposed entrance. Now this proposed entrance does have a canopy, which is nice. One of the comments I added in there, because this is it's not a long distance, but it's a decent distance. I've asked for them to add in a rest area along the exterior path of travel, as long as it doesn't impede with the 1.5 meter minimum requirement that we need for an exterior path of travel. That shouldn't be an issue. This seems to be wide enough. So I put that in there. And then the last piece I put in there for the additional building is for them to ensure that obviously automatic door openers are provided for all public entrances coming into the proposed building. That's it for comments from me on this piece. So I'll I'll open it up to the remainder of the committee to see if I have any additional comments. I'm just scrolling through here so you can see the different elevations so you get a better idea of what the actual building itself looks like. So here you have your east and west elevations. So the east is the front of the building, west is the back of it. And then you can see here we have the north elevations and south elevations where they would have their actual loading dock provided for any transportation trucks coming in. And that was it for drawings itself. So I'll just journey back over to the main one that you guys would want to be looking at.
Quick question.
Yep.
What do they mean by cobblestone?
So they didn't indicate cobblestone. I'm taking a look here and I can see that they have basically a square pattern going across the exterior path of travel. So this is going to be some form of, it's not going to be tiling obviously, but I'm assuming it's going to be some kind of form of interlocking. It's not going to be your basic concrete sidewalk or asphalt entrance going into a building. So that's why I said that. So they didn't indicate that. I'm just going based on the drawing. You can see that there's a pattern in the exterior path of travel. So it's not going to be a basic concrete path that you would normally see.
Matt, on the mezzanine office, are they going to put an elevator?
They didn't provide interior drawings on this, but I'm assuming, so technically speaking, they wouldn't have to provide one, but I can definitely ask that to the developer, John. It's a good question.
Sure.
Okay, I added that to my notes. Thank you, John.
Any further comments from anyone? Okay, if there are no further comments, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Okay, so moving on to item 7.4, memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application SP 2020-13, 145 to 147 Wellington Street West. And this is regarding submission number 1. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. A second?
John?
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to repeat again, so this is a site application for SP 2020-13. This is, again, we're going to be looking at a couple of residential units on 145 to 147 Wellington Street West. And this is the first time that we're taking a look at this specific application. So just heading over to the actual site plan application. And so in this case, I'm just going to zoom in so it's a little bit easier for you guys to take a look at this. Bear with me, you know how it always is when we do this. It usually gets a little bit slower, but it looks like it's cooperating. So in this case, we have 3 different block units that are being added in. So you can see over here where my mouse is currently hovering. This is an existing apartment building that's already there. The highlighted areas in the dark gray are the new additions that they're adding into this specific development. And so one of the issues I had taking a look at this site plan application, you can see that all of their barrier-free parking is located right over here where my mouse is currently at. And so I was kind of in a pickle on this one. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say with this specific one, because currently these barrier-free parking spots do a good job with providing barrier-free parking into the existing apartment building that you have in front of you right over here. But that being said, all of the units that we have over here on the left side for block number 3, block number 2, and block number 1, there is no other barrier-free parking provided over there. We do have 2 additional spots over here backing onto the other existing building. So we have a total of 6 spots for this specific area. But as you can see, the barrier-free parking does a great job of keeping the shortest distance possible to 2 of the buildings, but not so much to the additional townhomes. Now, the reason I had a dilemma with it is there is a far greater number of individuals being associated with the apartment buildings due to their size than the residential townhomes that are being added in blocks 1 to 3. So I asked for consideration for additional barrier-free parking to be provided on top of what we currently see on the site plan application. So that way we can have good distribution amongst the additional blocks. but I'm going to open it up to you guys to see what your thoughts are on this specific one. It was kind of, it's not a dilemma. I don't want to use that word, but it's not an easy situation in this case.
So generally what they're doing, they're eliminating some of the current parking areas that they have and building residential units on top, right? So they're going to be reducing parking, overall parking. So they'll maintain their percentage level that's acceptable, but
Correct.
there's no underground parking being added, nothing like that.
No, not in this case, because these are all above ground.
Wow. So they'll all be parking at the high school. Is that what you're saying?
Potentially. So like I said, I have the comments for additional barrier-free parking to be distributed amongst the blocks. John already caught it right on, which is basically percentage-wise, similar to the other one that we kind of came into. They're playing within the rules. So we've asked for consideration for additional barrier-free parking to be added in. And then as soon as I hear the comments back from the developer, I'll bring it back over to the committee to see what we have to work with.
Joanne here. Can I just ask something? When people change or develop a plan or something like this, and they're just making the handicap parking spots, are they not being pushed to even put in a couple of extra? Because there's always the case, I know it goes by the numbers, but there's always the case of extra people pulling up or coming in, or because of the amount of people they've got there. And we just seem to be letting them make the basic whatever they have to make, and that's it. And it concerns me in a little way, because one of the medical buildings, it's got 2 parking spots out the front and a ramp to go in the front door. And then at the back, it's got 1 spot, which is related to a doctor who's got a wheelchair, and she's got use of that spot, and a ramp beside her. And then there's no other ramp the whole length of the whole building on the sidewalk at all. And I just feel sometimes that they're getting away with the minimum, and I think maybe we should be pushing for a couple of extra or something.
Yep. Thank you for your comments, Joanne. So in this case, we are. And so there isn't an easy piece on this. So the province and their accessibility and seniors division has come up with a policy which provides what we kind of, what we follow in terms of minimums. To answer your question on whether or not there is an opportunity for us to make a greater push, there is. In the sense where the facility accessibility design standards that we're going to be talking about later today, that can become a part of our standard that we have an expectation to grow the amount of barrier-free parking. Now, keep in mind the facility accessibility design standards obviously associates with any town buildings. And again, it would then be a consideration pushed onto the actual private developers. The second piece that we can approach this from is actually taking a look at our zoning bylaw. And so making an amendment over there where we instruct that we go, again, above the minimum expectation that the legislation shows us from the province. So we would have to go down that route to have a stronger stance on pushing this out. If we stay status quo, our consideration in these memorandums would be our strongest pull, unfortunately, just because they are meeting the bare minimums of the law. I agree that they should be adding in. That's why we always say in consideration to add in additional barrier-free, but we can't forcefully make them do something as long as they're meeting the law.
Maybe we should be pushing on behalf of the people of Aurora to make it better for those people that require this. And I think that the council or somebody should be putting forth things to the government saying that they feel that these things should be upped a little bit and put it through that way. But anyway, thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Joanne.
One comment I have is would like clarification about the curb the process.
Sure, you want clarification about the curb depressions? What do you want to go over, Max?
I don't see any way a wheelchair can get up these curves.
Yep, so that's a good question, Max. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Max is just basically saying on this site plan application, he's not seeing any curb depressions indicated where the current barrier-free parking is. Is that correct, Max?
And where the building is, I understand that the building, the barrier free parking at the two buildings, but I would at least like to see curb the process for the other three buildings.
Perfect. So again, clarify me if I'm wrong, Max. So we were talking about the two buildings over here in the barrier-free parking, ensuring that they have the curb depressions, and then any of the additional ones that do get added in for blocks 1 to 3, that they ensure that they provide the curb depressions essentially associated with the access aisles, right? Yep. Okay. Got your nodded head there. Perfect. So to answer your question in terms of the curb depressions being shown on this site plan application, they may have not highlighted it in this specific site plan because this is an existing parking. And so they may have not added in on the site plan to notify that there is barrier-free entrance onto this curb depression. But rather than just making an assumption, I don't mind reaching out and ensuring that the current parking that they have provided does have the curb depressions. That's not a problem. I can reach out and ensure that they do have that available. And to your point, if additional spots do get added in, that's already a part of the design of public spaces. And so they would have to add in an associated curb depression to go with the access aisles that are associated with the barrier-free parking. So I'll notify the developer just to let us know whether or not the existing ones do have curb depressions. If they don't, that's definitely a comment that we can add in for them to do while they're working in this neighborhood. Thanks, Max.
Anything else from anyone? Looks like there's no further comments on this one. Okay, so I'll go ahead and call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Sorry.
opposed? Okay, that carries.
Sorry, before you keep going, Rochelle, just here are the
Yep.
elevations. I forgot to just show you guys that, but this is just how the stacked townhouses look. All right, all yours, Rochelle.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7.5. Okay, so this is regarding site plan application SP 2020-14 for 14452 Yonge Street, submission number 1. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. A second?
Max.
Thank you, Max.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as has been stated, we're taking a look at SP 2020-14. This is a new site plan application. So this is our first submission. And so I'm just going to jump over to the actual site plan application. So this is going to be a sewage pumping station that they're currently installing over here. So I had a couple of comments for this one specifically. I'll go ahead and zoom in so you guys have a little bit of an easier time seeing it. Everyone can see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yep.
And so in this example, you can see that in this case, they have the pumping station itself. Generally, when we deal with pumping stations, they're very inaccessible. A lot of the equipment itself is on a lower level. So the interior, when we get to those drawings, you'll see what I'm talking about. On the exterior and focusing on the design of public spaces, you can see on this main site plan application that they do not provide any barrier-free parking. And in this case, based on the numbers that they have indicated, we are required to have at least one type A barrier-free parking spot with its corresponding access aisle. So I've indicated that in the comments for them to include it. For the actual entrances into the pumping station, similar to the comments we always provide on these kind of applications, we're ensuring that all of the public use doors are automatic door openers so that are barrier-free. And then the last piece, I'm going to head over to the actual interior drawings to show you for. So just let me zoom back out. Here's just some exterior pictures so you can see how the building itself looks like. And then the next ones we're going to enter into are the actual interior. So as you can see, like I was mentioning, pretty much as soon as you enter into the building, because the pumping station is below grade, you can see that they have basically a staircase leading down into that level. And then this is the actual interior drawings for this specific pump station. So one of the pieces that I included is for them to provide a universal washroom. So this one over here, or if they choose to go ahead and use the back room, that's fine. But ensuring that at least one of them is universal. From what I was taking a look at the drawings, it didn't look like it was indicated as a universal washroom, but that would be a part of the Ontario Building Code that they would have to be required in order to install that piece. So made the comment for that. And then the other piece included as well is to include tactile indicators for all of the staircases leading into the actual pump station. So they have 4 different staircases over here. And so I indicated that they should be providing tactile indicators in there. One question I did want to put out to the committee itself, and Max, you probably would know this best, just being in the school system, the drop elevators that they have, like the platform elevators, would that be something of consideration? Do you find them effective at the schools at all, like that you've been through, or are they just kind of there for a check mark versus actually being a viable way of kind of traveling around?
Yeah, they work for the site. I don't know if I would suggest it because I don't know if it would be used often enough for it to be maintained properly, and there's a lot of these elevators that don't work because no one uses them.
Thanks, Max. So I'll just repeat what he was mentioning over there. So Max was saying that they work fine in terms of like being used as an elevator system, but he wouldn't suggest us adding that comment in just because it's going to be a low use tool. There's a maintenance component to it as well. And usually whenever individuals have to come out and use a piece of equipment like this, it's not working because of its lack of use. Did I miss anything there, Max? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, if there's no further comments, we can take a motion, Rochelle.
Perfect. Okay, so if there are no further comments, I'll go ahead and call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Okay, that carries. On to 7.6. This is regarding site plan application for Northern Trail and Boardwalk planting plan. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Joanne will move it.
Thanks, Joanne. Second?
Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, Matt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is Joseph Hartman Trail. This is one of the trails between Bayview and Leslie in that quadrant with St. John's. This is a internal application, so this is coming through our own departments. I have a couple of concerns with it, not because the legislation isn't being met. It complies fully with any of the rules, but I will show you what my concerns are. So I'm just going to zoom in on this boardwalk. So we're just taking a look at the boardwalk in this case. They're just adding an addition over here to go over some wetland. So you can see where my mouse is highlighting. This is the actual boardwalk that's being installed. Now, the boardwalk itself is less than the 5% inclination that leads to it being considered a ramp. When it's considered a ramp, there's very specific rules for the height of the fencing, where the handrails need to be placed, and there's some legislation pieces as well indicating whether or not the fence can be viewed as being climb worthy, where people can put their feet into it and then kind of make their way over top of it, right? So I'm going to start off with this drawing. The first comments that'll indicate, so all the comments that I've provided on this map, and I'm more than happy to sit down with Gary, who is the architect working on this at the town of Aurora, and really make a hard push on switching the way this is built. And I'll show you in the next couple of drawings the actual design of the railings across this boardwalk. But the current ones that I've included, just so you can see on this specific drawing, is for a landing space to be indicated over here. So you can see they've done a good job kind of putting some rocks on the side. There is no measurements showing me how wide this is. According to, and if we follow the legislation for considering this a ramp, which would be going above and beyond what it actually is, we would want to ensure that it has about 1.67 meters on both the length and the width of the landing space. So it looks like it should be pretty close to that. I don't have a lot of concerns, and I don't think they'd have any issues with expanding the landing space if we make that push over there. So the landing spaces would be basically wherever someone is entering into or off of the ramp. So that would be over here on the left side and on the right side. I'm going to switch over to the actual drawings where you can see how this is built for the barriers. So on the bottom drawing over here, you can see how all of the railings themselves going across or are parallel to the ground. And so like I was mentioning, because this is technically less than 5%, it's considered a normal exterior path of travel, right? And so they wouldn't really have to even provide these railings just because it's not that steep, but they are because of the height. And so I think we can make a good justification for them to actually follow the ramp rules on the specific application. So a couple of the things that we would have to change in this one is the actual design itself. Like I was mentioning earlier, you can see that all of the barriers are going horizontal and parallel to the ground. And so this provides an opportunity for, it encourages climbing. And so that's one of the pieces of legislation, both in the Ontario Building Code and the design of public spaces indicates, is ensuring that any of these fences that are provided on paths like this do not encourage any kind of climbing. So that's one point that I do want to strongly encourage. And then a couple of the other points that I've mentioned is for the height. And so if you go take a look at this drawing, you can see that they have a couple of railings where my mouse is indicated. So you can see that they have a couple at different levels. But I have to get clarification from the architect on this, whether or not it's continuous. So you can see that they have pillars going across the entire railing system. And so I want to ensure any of the railings that they actually do provide are graspable along the entire way. So if this railing is reaching this pillar, that you could actually still put your hand fully around the railing, so that way you don't have to let go as you're passing through pillars. That's one piece that we'll have to get clarification for. And then the actual height of this top railing will also have to be addressed. It needs to be between, I think it was 800 and 900, give or take, millimeters above the ground. And this didn't quite sit in that category. So if we have them actually following the legislation just a bit above the standards that they need to be doing, they'll have to adjust the actual height of that position as well. And so that was it for comments from me. Like I said, that'll change the design completely if they actually go ahead with following our consideration. And so you can just take a look at a different view over here, very similar to the original picture that I was showing you. And then that is it for drawings. So I'm just going to pop back over there and open it up to the committee for further comments or any other concerns that you guys might see with this specific application. I think I got them pretty good on this one. Like I said, we're asking basically for a revamp of the design. So we'll see what they come back with it. But if you guys have any other concerns with the area around the trail, like while they're kind of working there, or the actual boardwalk itself, how you'd like to see it designed, this would be the time to add any comments around that.
No, I think you're right, because this is a bridge, and there's nothing to kind of fall on.
Yep. Thanks, Max. So Max was just saying that he agrees with my comments. It's built basically like a bridge over the wetlands over here. So he was in agreement with the comments that I had.
What material are they using for the boardwalk?
That's a great question. I'd have to actually zoom in significantly to see, Haley.
I hear the question. What was it?
The question was, what's the material being used on this boardwalk? So I'm trying to take a look.
Okay, thank you.
It says paddles secured to post with 100 millimeter long ceramic coated. Paddles. My gut is telling me that this looks like it's going to be made of wood and metal, Haley, but I'm not seeing any confirmation. Let me move your faces, make sure there's nothing on the side here that I'm missing. Okay, let me just go to the next drawing. Maybe it's on there.
I ask because things like wood in our weather very quickly deteriorate and then is no longer accessible.
Agreed.
It says all wood to be pressure treated Western hemlock unless otherwise stated.
Perfect. Thank you for catching that. So yeah, like I was saying, it looks like it's going to be wood and a combination of just some metal bracketing and potentially some wires running through it. So it is going to be wood, Haley, and we can make the recommendation to not have it as wood. I can add that comment in there. That's a good point. And thank you for highlighting that, counselor. It's tough to see on the screen here, so I appreciate that. I appreciate it very much. Any other comments from the committee members? Okay, Rochelle, I think we're good to put a motion through then.
Okay, great. All right, I'll go ahead and call the vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. That brings us to 7.7. This is regarding site plan application for Vandorf softball diamonds application. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
It's John, I'll move it.
Thanks, John. A second?
Joanne will second it.
Thanks, Joanne.
Thank
Okay,
you,
Matt, go
Madam.
ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this application is, as the title says, is for, it's on Vandorf. We've got a softball diamond application coming in from the Town of Aurora team. This one was very well designed. I had no issues based on the viewing I had of the application. So you can see in my comments, I didn't have any comments at this time prior to coming over to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. But I'm happy to review it with you guys and show you everything that's being added in. And so in the first drawing, you can see that they've identified the signage, the curb depression, and the access aisles that are going to be provided for all of the barrier-free parking. So all of that meets to code, just like Max was asking for the earlier application. So in this one, they've identified that piece. We can jump into the actual application. And so let me zoom in so you guys can see it a little bit better. Is that good for everyone? I'm just going to slide it over. Okay. So in this case, they have provided the appropriate amount of barrier-free parking. All of the barrier-free parking is in the closest path of travel to the diamonds themselves. So you can see you're basically entering in over here. All of them have their own corresponding access aisles and curb depressions. The exterior path of travel does meet code. And so then everyone can travel over to either Diamond 1 or Diamond 2. The elevation is good on all the paths of travel. They're all underneath the 5% mark. And so we have no issues with any of the elevations for this specific site plan application. And then there wasn't really anything else to really speak to over here. You can see the paths lead over to the diamonds. Some of the discussions that we can have, if you guys have ever seen them, is whether or not we want to start talking about bleachers, whether or not we want to kind of get into creating accessible bleachers. And then for the actual eating area, the Town of Aurora actually makes all of their tables in-house and we make them accessible. So I wasn't concerned about the outdoor eating that's going to be provided along the park over here, but that's definitely a comment I can have with the planners just to ensure that they're staying on top of that. But we've always been building our own tables. So those will be accessible for any of the outdoor eating that we provide over here. Let me just drop, no, it's not moving. Oh, is this the last page? Maybe that's why. But yeah, that was it for comments. Like I said, it's a very simple application, but I'm curious to see whether or not there's something that you guys might catch that I may have missed on this one.
Your comment, oh, go ahead.
What material are they using for the path of travel?
You guys are on me for this path of travel material today, aren't you guys? Hold on, let's zoom in again.
Sorry.
Oh no, don't be sorry. Every time you guys make points like this, I'll make sure to have, like, if that's what you guys want to know material wise in the future, I'll make sure to have it ready so I don't have to actually start zooming in. So that's not a problem. Right there, asphalt paving.
Is there any type of stone is not really accessible at all?
I agree with that fully, Max. If there was any kind of gravel or anything, I would say that we make that push. But in this case, it looks like they are using an asphalt. So we won't have any of that stone impeding anyone coming in with either a wheelchair or any other kind of assistive technology. So that's a good point. Have any of you guys seen like accessible bleachers? This is kind of like something I was just kind of looking at. I know when we talk about like auditoriums that they are able to like build in specific barrier-free spots. I haven't really seen anything on the outdoor side of things. So I wanted to pick your brains on that piece. Is maybe you guys have seen something in your travels, either here in the province or anywhere else. Have you guys ever seen like quote unquote accessible bleachers at any of these kind of parks in the past?
Joanne here. I haven't seen it, but the thing is, that's exactly the question I was going to ask. I was wondering if there was some sort of lift or anything that could lift at least the person up to the level where they could walk along and get their seat, you know? And that was the one question that came to my mind right away. And I've never seen.
Yep. So that's a great question, Joe. We do have lifts available for whenever we do special events. I don't think that there is like a permanent fixture lift like that we would have there at all times, because we wouldn't have staff to operate it or help individuals use it, kind of thing. But I'll ask the question again before I'm more than happy to do the research on it. I'm curious actually, now that I've brought it up, whether or not there is such thing as like accessible outdoor bleachers. But yeah, other than Joanne, anyone else have any comments on that piece?
Tip my way of thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, but all outdoor bleachers in this case would be accessible because they have space beside.
That's a good point, Max. So Max was just mentioning that as long as like there's space on the sides, usually that would be considered barrier free. Maybe that's something we talk about when we get into our design standards as well. Whether or not that's something we want to add in whenever we're kind of building park features or any of these kind of diamonds, is ensuring that we have like a designated spot for accessibility, similar like how we have in council chambers. It's kind of a band-aid that has been done in the past, but we have indicated mats on the floor for people coming on both levels, just to ensure that no one else is taking up those spots. So maybe that's something that we add into the park side of things when we're looking at the design standards, is ensuring that we always have, to Max's point, just a bare spot basically meant towards accessibility. I think that would be, and I'll take a look at the bleachers too. I'm just curious whether or not that technology exists.
Yeah,
that.
In this case, it's not like a football stadium where all the field is covered with bleachers. Here you have spread out, so.
Yeah, I agree with that, Max. It's pretty spread out, so there's plenty of space for kind of people to travel and kind of get their view of the diamonds, right? So yeah, that's a good point. Rochelle, you had a comment too?
Yeah, it's just, sorry, it was just on the bleachers as well. I mean, I've never seen any kind of, I mean, I've not been around bleachers too often, but I've never seen any kind of accessible, spot. I think it's an interesting thing to consider for sure. I mean, I don't know about any kind of equipment, because if it's outdoors, it would kind of be susceptible to the elements, and I think it might get, rusty or something like that. But definitely, I think like a designated spot would, be something. And also, I was thinking, even if like someone, in a wheelchair were able to park in a certain location, having sort of a designated attendant spot might be something to look into as well, because often when you go to games and such, you're with someone, and having that sort of spot on the bleacher, which is nearest to where a wheelchair or someone with a disability device might sort of park, would definitely be something I think that people might want.
Thank you, Rochelle. I'm just writing that down.
Because I know like attendant spaces are sort of the thing now, and I think I've found it to be sort of helpful because then you don't have to sort of ask someone to move, or even if you do, they totally understand, if the person you're with has to sit beside you type thing.
Yeah, I know the town of Aurora does that for specific events, like when we run some like hockey events and stuff, especially when people reach out in advance, we do designated spots for barrier free. But I'll add that to the notes as well. So that way, I'm curious if like a policy can come out of it kind of thing, like something a little bit more official than, to your point, like if it's like we're almost dependent on people reaching out and asking the question versus making it an available option for people to take advantage of, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something to think about because like as you said at the beginning, I mean, I've never considered bleachers in any kind of sort of accessibility context. So it's definitely something to think about for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I was like, as I was just kind of thinking about it, I'm like, I wonder if they do it, but perfect. Thanks, Rochelle. Any other comments?
Any accessible water fountains?
Let's see.
Are there water fountains in the design at all, or?
Looks like we have two actually. Yep, one, or these might be lights. Sorry.
There's some bicycle parking spots.
I'm going to assume that there is a water fountain right here.
Is there a universal washroom?
They'll have to comply with having the universal washroom out here if they're building it. Yeah, Max, but I'll indicate that to them as well. That's a good point with the water fountain, John. I'll add that point in. That was a good one.
How about your actuators for the washroom?
Yep. So if they're doing a universal washroom, which they will have to, door actuators are a part of the actual criteria for making it a universal washroom. That'll be a part of that. In the Ontario Building Code right now, the new standard as well is ensuring that they have like emergency buttons and everything in there as well. So the new universal washroom standards are very accessible. Like they've done a good job in that sense. Now it's a matter of like how we had it at our previous meeting is ensuring that we start adding those into all of our buildings on the main floors. So that way people have a barrier-free washroom wherever they go at the town of Aurora, right? So yeah, that would be a part of it, Max, to answer your question.
I'm sorry, I have not read that legislation.
Yeah, that's why you're the worst one of the group, Max. It's a good question, Max. Never worry about it. Thank you. Any other comments, concerns? Clear as mud. Okay. Rochelle, it's all yours.
Perfect. Okay, I'll go ahead and call the vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right, that carries. That brings us to 7.8, roundtable discussion on the Town of Aurora Accessibility Plan 2018 to 2024. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Joanne will move.
Sorry, who was that?
Joanne.
Joanne will move.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. Can I get a second? Thank you, Max.
Perfect. Thank
Okay,
you,
Matt.
Madam Chair. So we'll discuss operating and capital budget like we normally do at all of our roundtable discussions. So we'll start off with operating. Joanne, I'll give you an update just because you weren't here at the other meetings. I know one of your specific requests from the operating budget back in 2020 was to add in additional railings at the spa at the Aurora Family Leisure Complex. That has been added in. So now there is the 2 railings actually going into the spa. So whenever the Aurora Family Leisure Complex opens back up for you, that'll be available for the aquafitters that were requesting it. Sorry?
No, I just said I can get to use the bars then when it opens up again.
You got it, yeah. And the other piece as well is we added in the wave operators for both the male and the female change room, which was another piece out of the operating budget in 2020. Those both got installed at the Aurora Family Leisure Complex. So now the male, female, and family change room all have barrier-free access into the change rooms. Yeah, so I just wanted to give you a quick update on those because I know those were 2 of your requests from last year before you weren't able to attend the final meetings. In terms of 2021, I know we had our discussion previously. We had a couple of items that came through based on the videos that we had about the Aurora Family Leisure Complex and Town Hall. I know we want to start taking a look at universal washrooms. So that's going to be in discussion with the operations team to kind of take a look at all of our facilities and what the plans are in terms of renovation. I know they have annual plans in terms of what they're going to be working on throughout the years. So I want to make sure that we're able to work with them and correlate how we can start updating those areas. So thank you for your comments on those. Counselor, actually, one of the things that we are doing right now, and so the reason I didn't send it out to you guys before this meeting is I wanted to ensure that the new counselor is able to participate in this as well. We do virtual tours now of all of our all of our recreation and town-owned properties. And so what I basically do is before every meeting, I usually send over 2 video tours of different site plans. And that helps us build our capital plan moving forward. So right now we have items already designated for this year and up until 2024, but we can continue to add on to that capital plan, which obviously goes through council for approval. But you guys will be receiving the next set of videos, which we can discuss in for the March Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. And I'll also send all of you guys the updated checklist that I've actually built. So I know you guys had the previous one. I've added in a couple of new pieces and changed the format. So I'll send the updated one for all of you guys to follow through when we're doing those site plan visits. Now, for this year, I wanted to run a couple of things by you guys. So we also installed the adult change tables at both the Aurora Family Leisure Complex and the Stronach Aurora Recreation Complex. I've reached out to Royal Securities, who is our main vendor that we use to add in any of the door operators that we use at our facilities. And I'm requesting for them to give us a quote, which I'll bring over to the March committee meeting to add in a door operator for the Stronach, the change room that specifically has the adult change table. If we're going to be providing an adult change table, obviously we want to ensure that the doorway is also accessible, right? So we didn't have the budget for it in 2020. Now that the change table got installed in December, we're going to add in the door operator prior to the facilities opening up back out to the public. Hopefully, as long as they're able to do it, depending on their timelines and how busy they are. But I'd like to have it done prior to them actually, the public coming back in, so that way they're able to use it. The Aurora Family Leisure Complex, because of the style that we have for those change rooms, for those of you that have gone in there, they're basically just wood doors, right? Like those very like those kind of plywood doors. So we can't throw a door operator on that one specifically, but I will go ahead and get the installation quote done for us for the Stronach Aurora Recreation Complex. We actually had 2 requests that came in from staff, which is fantastic as well. One of them is for the Aurora Senior Center. So right across from Town Hall, for those of you that have been there, leading out from the west side of the building to where the bocce courts are. A lot of seniors use that specific path through the building in order to get out to the bocce courts. They requested that the Accessibility Advisory Committee considers adding in a door operator on that part of the building, and that we actually take a look at the option of considering adding in a ramp for that part of the building as well. There's obviously a number of users with disabilities going into the senior center, and so we want to kind of create an easier barrier-free path of travel to the bocce courts For those of you that haven't been to the bocce courts over here at Aurora, the seniors are very particular about who uses them and how they're maintained. So I know that they'd be quite pleased if we increase the accessibility kind of leading out over there. So wanted to get feedback on those 3 items, see if there's any concerns or comments on us proceeding with at least getting the quotes for those items and getting those potentially done in 2021.
Quick question.
Yep.
I haven't seen the bocce course because I'm not but can they be used by persons with disabilities?
Nope. So that's a good question, Max. And the senior center is going to be the next video that you guys are going to be receiving. So since you haven't been there, I'll video it for you and you'll be able to see it so you know what I'm talking about specifically. The bocce courts themselves are in ground. So no, like if someone was using any kind of assistive technology, like a wheelchair or like a scooter or anything along those lines, the bocce courts themselves would not be accessible for them to get into the sand pit. That being said, like in that case, most people wouldn't want to go in regardless with their wheelchairs or their equipment, right? But that might be a consideration for us when we start discussing that site plan, is whether or not we want to kind of revamp the way the bocce courts are built and whether or not we can build in basically like a curb depression so people can kind of ramp into it if they want to partake in that as well. So that can definitely be an addition that we discuss as well. Good question, Max. Okay, so I'm not hearing any rebuttals. So I'll go ahead and start getting those numbers for everybody, and I'll bring that over to the March meeting like we normally do, so I can show you what the quotes are going to be and what that'll do in our overall operating budget. So we'll keep that available for March when we meet again. Let's move on to capital projects themselves. So the facility accessibility design standards, we have received our first draft of it. I'm going to be sending it to you guys right after this meeting. The vendor is going to be scheduled to come meet with us, answer any questions, any concerns, or any additions that we as the committee or staff would like to see on the facility accessibility design standards. So I'm going to send it out to you guys. That gives us all a month to kind of go through it. In my email, I will go through what the design standards entail, right? So I can briefly go over it with you guys right now. So you're going to see a lot of information about the inside of our buildings. So very similar to the questions and concerns that we talked about when we did our previous site plan applications. There's going to be sections about counter heights, railing heights, universal washrooms, basically anything that you can think of inside, water fountains, doorways, widths, materials. It touches on all of those areas. And so again, like we were talking about previously, the facility accessibility design standards or FADs, what we're basically doing is we're going one up on the Ontario Building Code, right? So very similar to the conversation that we've been mentioning is it seems like applicants are basically doing the bare minimum of the Ontario Building Code or the design of public spaces. We're doing this FADS project in order to increase that minimum standard. And so for us as a municipality, we have to absolutely meet the FADs that we imply. And then for any private developers, we're basically going to say that this is our guideline standard that we would like to see all applicants start using moving forward. Now, when we meet with the vendor, we'll make it very clear. Of course, the FADs is for us as a municipality to make sure that we are doing an amazing job at accessibility. But the vendors or applicants for anything that are private, the regular legislation still applies to them unless we pass a bylaw basically making sure that they follow FADs. Now, that's a discussion for a later date. When you guys receive it, make notes and give yourself a lot of time. I'm happy to meet with every one of you individually if you have questions about it. The way it's constructed is each of the sections has a rationale for why it sits in the design standards. It has a lot of drawings indicating what the actual lingo means. So if you ever take a look at the Ontario Building Code, it's basically just a bunch of numbers and letters indicating what the technical standards are. The FADS actually provides you with diagrams and pictures and measurements that you can see. So that way you can see what the height, depth, width actually looks like visually as well. And it corresponds to the technical part of the actual design standards that are there too. One other thing before I pass on for any questions, before we take a look at it next month, is take a look at the feel of the standards too. So the way it's currently is constructed is in 3 columns. I've seen these design standards, and in the email, I don't mind actually sending you out a couple of examples from the different municipalities and see like how they've done theirs. Some people do it in HTML format, which is basically what you would see on a website where everything kind of just follows down in paragraph format. Other people have used the 3 columns in order to keep the book a little bit more compact, so it's easier to kind of get through material. But we can design it to our specs how we would like to see it. So even outside of actually the technical side of things, in terms of how you visually want it to look, you're more than welcome to provide your feedback on all of that as well. Any questions?
Joanne here. Can I just make a comment? My phone is acting up at the moment, so I'm going to go on my other phone, but I won't be able to contact you by voice.
Okay, thanks, Joanne.
I'll just be able to listen to you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. So I know you guys don't have it physically in front of you yet. I'm going to be sending it out so we can comment on it next month. But any questions you guys had before or anything else you want included in the email that I provide to you guys so you guys can look over this with clarity? Cross that bridge when we get there kind of situation?
Yeah.
Perfect. So like I said, at any point, as you guys are kind of going through it, ask away. You guys have my information, so I'm more than happy to sit down with you guys individually and go through it. If you guys need some clarification on any of the points as we go through it. Like I said, give yourself time. It's big, right? So we want to make sure that we go through it in detail, and don't think that if you miss comments the first round, we can't make adjustments. We're going to be meeting with the vendor on a monthly basis until we approve it, right? So even if you miss something on the first shot, no problem. We can continue to kind of take a look at it and add comments as we kind of see fit. So we'll get there very quickly. We anticipate that we could probably have this done in the first half of 2021, which is ahead of schedule. Originally, when we put out the RFP for this project, we gave them a full year, which would lead us basically to September of 2021. They were basically saying that they can work with us at our pace as fast as we can do it. So I think after about 3 months kind of back and forth between us and the vendor, we should have a pretty good copy that can be finalized. Okay, bad news. So last time we were talking about audible pedestrian signals. We had 2 projects scheduled for 2021. We had Yonge and Kennedy, and we had Yonge and Henderson. So the engineering team, due to COVID, had to update their 10-year plan for road construction. As I've stated before, our projects for audible pedestrian signals connect directly with the road construction projects, so we're not ripping up the roads twice in different time periods. So Kennedy's been pushed off by 1 year, so it's now going to be scheduled for 2021. I saw that, Rochelle, and this one's going to get you more. Henderson is now not being touched until 2027.
Oh,
so that's quite a bit down the road. In the past, we have done these kind of construction projects solo. That's definitely something that we can consider doing again. And like I said, my only apprehension with it is you're basically doing the same thing twice, right? Like one time we're building and removing all the ground in order to get the wiring in for our signals, and then they're going to come back around again when they're doing the roadway and the paths of travel when they're planned to do that in the 10-year project. So I'm open to hearing your feedback on how you want to proceed with it. If it stands as is, the timelines that I stated would be 2021 for Kennedy, so next year. Sorry, 2022. I said 2021, and we are in 2021. And then for the Henderson project, it would be 2027.
It's Joanne. Can you still hear me?
Sure can, Joanne.
how much do they cost? Does it vary per corner, or does it basically the same price?
It does vary, depends on the electrical work required and whatnot, but generally speaking, a project is in the $60,000 to $80,000 range. I found that we've been in that $80,000 range more recently with just the cost for these usually. So I would say it's going to be between that 75 to 80,000 for sure. So they're not cheap to add them in. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering, is there any possibility, because of the nature of things, and I mean, I know this is the wrong time of year because of what's been going on, but is there any possibility that a larger company would donate to that specific thing?
Maybe that would be, I mean, if someone wants to donate to us, we would never say no. I don't know of anyone that would be willing to. We can pose the question, I guess, out to the community through each of our networks and see whether or not there's an opportunity like that.
I don't see why it would. I mean, I'm a great one at going out and getting donations, but the thing is, I don't think it ever hurts to ask.
Yep. And so one of the other things we can consider as well is there are grants that generally come out through the province and the federal government that we always keep our eye out on. And so that might be something that we can do as well, as when we do get those grants coming across our table, we could allocate it towards a project such as this.
But it's a specific thing that we need in our community, and I think it's very important to companies that are in our community maybe to consider doing that. I mean, they might even be able to put up a sign saying "Donated by" right on the edge of the whatever the equipment is that's sitting there. But that would be publicity for them. So that's another way to look at it.
This might be a really out there question, but have we looked into alternatives ways to other audible signal without ripping up the road?
So the audible pedestrian signals are a legislative thing. So what Max was asking is whether or not there's alternatives to ripping up the ground and adding in the wiring that way in this case. I can take a look to see whether there is alternatives for powering those, but because they're connected to the lights and they correspond with traffic lights, I highly doubt that there's a viable alternative. I can do the research on it. I haven't heard anything in dealing with any of the Ontario networks that I sit on, but they
couldn't be included in a poll or anything.
Yeah, you have to understand the safety aspects of that as well, because it has to be very certain that everything's lined up.
Exactly, and that's what I was saying. They're connected to the actual traffic signals of the roadway, so. That's what I'm saying. I don't think there is an alternative that I'm aware of. And the legislation is pretty specific on what the expectations are for audible pedestrian signals, right? So they're very strict with how they want those, to John's point, for safety and for accessibility reasons. So I don't think we're going to find an alternative, Max, but I'm always happy to do that research.
That is a very bad design.
Yep. John, I think you were trying to get a point in earlier.
Well, Joanne has a good point about sponsorship and so on, because we did quite well with the Rainbow Crosswalk at Yonge and Wellington. I know somebody in the community stepped up to manage that, but whether or not somebody would do that at that intersection.
Yeah, we can take a look. I'm curious to see if someone's going to do the sponsorship at that kind of a cost, like 80,000 is it's quite the chunk.
Well, I mean, even if they sponsored half of it, you know, or whatever, I mean, it's a helping hand, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, but the thing is, I know what it has to be connected to the light and everything, but why couldn't it be connected through the pole that the lights go through? Why does it have to dig up the road?
Well, because the wiring itself, because of like it's conducting quite a bit of electricity, right? So we're gonna have to keep all the wiring and stuff underneath the ground. So from the pole, like usually you have signal stands, right, where you're gonna be walking to next. Like you're gonna be clicking the audible pedestrian signal. They're not always on the actual light pole. They're gonna be next to wherever you're walking out. And Henderson specifically, I think all the corners are pretty wide over there, off the top of my head. So there's no way that we would have a signal for going either north, south, west, east, close enough to actually the curb depression where you go onto the exterior path of travel. That's one of the very specific parts of the legislation, is it needs to be close to where you're actually walking out. The other piece as well is you shouldn't be sharing one pole for the actual signals. So that way people aren't getting mixed up. Am I going north-south or am I going west-east kind of thing, right? So there's a couple of those variables too, where that's why we wouldn't be able to just use that one light post to kind of dictate where traffic is going on each of the intersection pieces.
Yeah.
So that's why
I just find sometimes that engineers, I mean, and stuff, think in engineered ways, you know what I mean? And I think sometimes they have to think simpler. I know when my son used to work on metals and stuff, and they'd say, well, shoot this down the thing, you know, and he'd say, well, if you shoot that down the thing, it will come off the end. Oh, no, it won't. Just do it. This is what we planned. And they would shoot it down the thing, and it would come right off the thing and fly through the air. But, you know, there's just, sometimes I think there's too much thinking, and instead of trying to find an answer to something. I don't know. That's just the way I feel. So anyway.
Thanks, Joanne. Yeah, we'll take a look at a couple of our options, and I can get back to the committee on that piece.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Just out of curiosity, what were the dates of reconstruction of those road surfaces before?
So originally we were doing both of them this year. The long history of this, actually, we were starting to work on getting the audible pedestrian signals installed in 2019. There was a pushback. We went to 2020, and now we've gone ahead with the new road construction plan where those are being offset to a couple of different dates. So it got pushed back. And then with COVID, I just heard from the engineering team actually pretty recently that these unfortunately fell into the category of also being pushed off until another year. So yeah, I got the bad news recently on that. Can you do the years
again? Can you just tell us the years again?
I'm going off the top of my head here, but I'm pretty sure that originally when we were looking at our accessibility plan, it was 2019. And then we had pushed them off to 2020 to follow with the road construction because they pushed it off one more year. And then because of COVID, they've basically built a new 10-year plan moving forward, and they've allocated these projects in accordance to whenever they're working on those portions of that street.
It'll be a few years with the one anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we push them to rearrange?
You want me to mess with the engineer's plan, Max? I can ask that question. I'm going to tell you, knowing that team, it's going to be a hard no on them rebuilding their 10-year plan. I'm assuming it's been passed through council and whatnot. Maybe councilor can indicate whether that's happened or not. But if it has gone through those steps, I highly doubt that they're going to go back and rebuild it.
I don't recall, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. But
yeah, you guys see a lot.
I was just about to send an email to Mr. Downey just to ask for a copy of it.
I think it would be going through David, Councillor Gallo, David Waters. he would be handling the planning and engineering team. Okay, next piece past the bad news, back onto better things, I guess. So one of the things that we were talking about previously as well was the information and communication standards, and I was giving you guys updates on where we stood with that. So I'll give you another update on that piece. So all of our staff members that do do any kind of document posting have been trained in terms of accessibility. So we've been training them in terms of using Word and PDF. We have gotten our website to be fully compliant. One thing, which is great news, one thing to keep in mind with the coding aspect of a website is, and this is where I was mentioning for those of you that were listening to the conversation I was having with Matt earlier, I reached out to the province about this because as we update code or make changes, or any staff member goes in and makes even the smallest adjustment, if there's even a small error, we technically are no longer compliant with how strict the province had made their legislation on websites, right? So it's kind of like this teeter-totter back and forth between making corrections and making sure that we're 100% compliant. So I reached out to the province. I spoke with one of their policy analysts on Friday of last week, actually, and they don't have a concrete answer on how they want to handle this for all organizations. And like I've mentioned to you guys before, we're one in many that are kind of struggling with the Information and Communication Standard Act and how the province really wants to work with us moving forward. So a part of their auditing process is they're going to basically send out staff members on various dates, just like any audit would basically work. And they would take a test of our website to see where we might be lacking in compliance. The good thing is basically what the steps are going to be, as long as we are pretty much compliant, which the town of Aurora is doing well with right now, is they would basically give us, hey, we noticed that you weren't compliant in this specific area of your website. They give you a designated amount of time to make that correction. And then if we didn't catch that already, we would go ahead and make that fix. So that was good clarification from the province on that piece, where it's not just like a fine that they hit you with in case there's an error that comes up. And that was my concern that I brought up, is because you have a multitude of hands working on a website at any point, an error can occur at any moment. So we do have software that runs in the back end of our website. So we get weekly reports that should be telling us whether or not we have any issues with our compliance. So as we see them, we make those corrections. But I want to give you that heads up. Now, in terms of the other piece that I've talked to you guys about, the Information Communication Standard has something called WCAG standards. So these are the technical pieces of coding for making sure that websites and documents are accessible. Now, WCAG has what's called, they're basically the lower standard in comparison to something called PDF UA. So when you're looking at documents specific to have a true, perfect, accessible document, it's considered to be PDF UA compliant. Now, the software that we're taking a look at to purchase for staff members, so that way when we're uploading documents to our website, it would meet the PDF UA standards. But my question to the province was, when they're providing audits, what they would be auditing according to. Would we be looking at WCAG, which is the lower standard, or would we be looking at PDF UA? The answer is WCAG. So I wanted to let you guys know basically that we are going above the provincial standard for any of the documents that we're going to be putting on our website to ensure that we don't have any dealings with them where they're saying some of the documents have issues. So we're taking a look at that. We're going to be going into RFP probably for this in Q1 to find a either standing offer or a ongoing contract with a vendor for remediation services. So one of the things I was mentioning to you guys as well is any document that gets posted on the website now, whether it's a vendor, internal staff member, or any of these agendas and minutes that we're pushing out to the public, need to be accessible. Some of these documents are very complex and we won't be able to handle them in a timely manner in-house. And so part of this RFP would be to have a vendor available. So that way, if we're sending something out to them that needs to be sent back to us in a compliant format, we'd have a 24 to 48 hour window to get that document back. And so that way, anything that we put onto our website continues to meet compliance. So we're setting all of this up basically in stages to ensure that by the end of this year, anything that we're uploading on a regular basis, as hopefully as concrete proof as possible. That way we don't have any more leaks or issues moving forward with any of our website or documents that we're posting online. So just wanted to give you a quick update on that. We're doing very well. We're on schedule right now, and what we've agreed on with the province is to ensure that everything is good up until June of this year, which, like I said, we're on track for that. The province also indicated that as long as we're communicating with them regularly in case any hiccups or issues come up, which with projects, there potentially could be any of those that arise. They mentioned as long as we're in contact with them and give them our plan and updates as to what we're doing to fix and resolve those issues, they'll be okay with that. So I'll continue to update you guys monthly on the information and communication pieces that we're working on at the moment. But as of right now, we're on track and moving pretty well with everything that I've posted to you guys previously in our other meetings.
Just a quick question on that. Is that
yes.
Any other historical documents going to be updated as well, or is that just a go forward?
So we're working, yeah. So it's almost a two-phase approach. We're teaching staff members for any current documents how to make sure that they're compliant when they're updating it. And yes, we are looking at our old repository, all of our records that's available to the public, and making sure that those are accessible as well. So depending on the complexity of some of those documents, as long as we have the capabilities to do them in-house, we'll do them and re-update them to the website. But anything a little bit more complex, we would send off to the vendor. Once we go through that process, they would make the fix, send it back over to us, and then we would re-upload available to the public in an accessible format.
And is there a time frame for that to fix all the previous documents? The
hope is to have everything done by June of this year. So we're taking a look at all the documents right now. So as long as everything stays on track, we should be good to go. In the end, it'll come down to cost, right? We're trying to, and I was mentioning this, it's tricky working with the new counselor coming in versus the old ones. So the history on it is when we were working on these documents, sorry, let me catch my train of thought where I was going with this. Oh yeah, the history for you. So we were working on all of these documents for the last couple of years. Now, for us to basically send this out over to the vendor, sorry, Councillor Gallo, can you re-ask the question? I don't know why my brain farted on the situation, but
you don't have to give me the history. It's okay. You answered my question. No problem.
I want to give you the history. I don't know why I brain farted there.
It's okay.
Ask the question again.
It's okay. As long as we're doing it, that's all I was really concerned about.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I don't know why I brain farted there. Completely honest. Any questions about the other steps that we're taking currently in this procedure? Okay. The last piece that I wanted to bring up, and I know this was one of the points that John was talking about with the housing units that we were discussing when we were looking at the subdivisions. I think right now our focus, we obviously have the information communication standards that we're talking about at the moment. And then the second piece that we're obviously working on is the facility accessibility design standards that we plan on having both of these done in the first 2 quarters of 2021. I'd like to schedule us to start thinking about taking a look at what some of the other municipalities are doing for any of these subdivisions being added in. And so these standards, as far as I'm aware from the conversations that I've had with Caledon, do apply to all private developments that are happening. So that basically ensures that they are providing accessible housing, they're providing accessible entrances into the homes, and then for any of the buildings or apartment buildings that are being provided, that they are above the minimum 15% that's currently being provided for any of those developer applications. So I'd like to take a look at it. I'd like to send over to you guys what has currently been built, and I'd like to kind of go through it with a deeper view on what it is exactly that they're asking of these developers, because I'm curious. I haven't had a chance to read through the full document. But I think that's a good opportunity for us to take our next steps, I think, as a town of Aurora, to kind of address the concerns that we've had around accessible housing here in the municipality. I know we're not going to be building a crazy amount moving forward in future years just because a lot of the land has been developed, but it's definitely something for consideration. And I think that addresses, John, what you were asking about previously, right?
Yeah.
So I can take a look. I can find that for us off their website and send it out for everyone to kind of start taking a look at. And I think that that would be a good conversation for us to have moving forward, is whether or not we want to take those standards and see whether or not that could be applicable to us here at the town of Aurora.
It's Joanne here. Can I ask a question?
Yes, Joanne.
When you're talking about going ahead and looking into things like this, is any thought, or it doesn't seem to me that there's any thought given anyway, but all of a sudden you see townhouses going up and everything. And one of the things that I've noticed completely all the time is that there's a tremendous amount of stairs going up to them. I mean, I know it has to do with the land, and I know it has to do with this, but then we have stackable town housing, and so you have one down below, one up above, and everything. And I know when they put the one in on Yonge Street, I questioned why there was no elevator at some point in the building, and there wasn't because of the stackable housing. And those, those are the simple things to me that have to be thought about. The generations are getting older, for one thing, let alone the people that have accessibility issues. And but accessibility is such a big thing, and we're trying to help out all of those people that weren't out in the public for many, many years. And I just feel that it's something that the town should look into more. And when they're doing it, when they build a place or when they rebuild a place, what they actually are rebuilding or building.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm bringing up that we should probably take a look at these standards that other municipalities are. And I think Caledon might be one of the very, very few that have anything at all. That would be the only way that we can address this, Joanne. The legislation is in place for developers to follow, so they do follow the standards that have been provided by the province. As a municipality, if we want to see that change, we would have to start looking at those kind of guidelines that I mentioned in order for us to really have some kind of teeth behind ensuring that developers do follow those procedures.
Yeah, well, my friend lives at Archer Hill, and what's the name of that street that goes through right down by Hallmark? I've forgotten the name.
Van Dorf.
Van Dorf, yes. Anyway, those houses in there, there's about 12 or 14 houses in there that have 2-acre properties each. Beautiful homes. And a builder's gone in. My girlfriend was telling me that he's gone in and offered them an amount of money for it. And he's taking them down into townhouses. And to me, I don't know. We just can't keep on wrecking our land and not caring what we do with it. And I mean, it would be different if the houses were falling apart or something like that, but they're not. They're gorgeous homes and, everything, and they've all got 2 acres. And so I don't know. I just think there's a lot more thinking has to be done as to where we want this town to go. I just don't see why it has to shuffle along and mix up itself with everybody else, And this is always been and has been a gorgeous town. And we had very many wonderful things up front. And another thing, we're in the throes of the old. I'm going to forget the name of it too. The moraine and things like that, and they're not even thinking about those things now. So I don't know. It just gets me when I think about it all. I mean, I've lived here since 1969 now, and I think it's going the other way instead of the beautiful way it was going before. Anyway,
Thanks.
Thank you.
No problem. That might be a little bit out of our realm as the Accessibility Advisory Committee in terms of who develops and where they develop. Councillor might be able to speak to... Yeah, but what they develop is important. If you have a pile of stairs and everything else, that's not accessible. No, I understand. So I was just going to say maybe Councillor Gallo could address where would be the best point for us as a committee to kind of bring those concerns up to, but it wouldn't be through the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Yeah.
Well, somebody has to show some interest though and take it somewhere. As far as I'm concerned, because that's going to help the accessibility people, the people that need those accessible things. But anyway, I just thank you very much for listening.
Any other comments from anyone about the housing designs that we're going to be taking a look at?
Yeah, I think this is very important because there are a lot of new innovations that are not accessible at all, and the legislation needs to keep up.
Agreed, Max. Yeah, thank you for your comments on that. Okay, I'm not hearing any other pieces. That was it for me from the operating and capital side of things. So if anyone else wants to add anything else in terms of things that we should be considering, we've got, I think, a couple of minutes left. So now would be your time to shine. And like I said, I'll be sending, now that we have Councillor Gallo with us, you'll be receiving the next tour videos in the next week or so.
Right.
Okay, Rochelle, I think we're good.
Okay, great. So if there aren't any further comments, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Perfect, that carries. The last is informational items, and we have no informational items. So if there's nothing else, I guess we move to adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Just before you adjourn, just want to, I should have said it at the beginning, but just
Yeah, go ahead.
thanks for having me on the committee, and look forward to working with all of you for the next, I guess, 2 years. So looking forward to it.
Welcome, Councillor.
Yes, welcome.
Welcome.
Okay, so
Congratulations too, by the way.
anything else, anyone? Okay, I guess anyone for a motion to adjourn?
Matthew.
Second?
Aye.
Thanks, Max. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. I guess we are officially adjourned.
Right. Have a good month.
See you guys in March.
Bye.